instructor with students and went through all of that. And then I worked with Dr. Mary Adams, and because she wanted someone to do the psychological aspects of gerontology, because no one was doing the mental health aspects of gerontology, just talking about aging, illnesses, and diseases, and so on. And so I went into her classes all the time and did the other side, kind of like we went on the road doing dog and pony shows about looking at the psychological aspects. And so that's how I became interested in geriatric mental health. And then I wrote for a K Award from the National Institute of Mental Health and got a 3-year postdoc. I worked with people like Kitty Buckwalter, and she was one of the first nurses. And it was a time when they brought nurses, psychologists, and psychiatrists together as a group. And we studied all over the country. I got to spend a day with Erik Erikson, and I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. And it was just a real nice thing to understand more about psych nursing. And with the K Award, then I had to apply for an R01. And again, I said, I can never do that. And Barry Leibowitz, who was in, said, you have to do some research. And so he says, you're just going to have to make the application. And so I did, and I started by studying older people and their self-care practices, because that was the time when we wanted to learn more about how older people did cope. What did they do for themselves? And so I wrote the R01, and it got funded. Much to one of the physicians that I worked with, he was so upset. He said, I can't believe you got funded for an R01, and I've been trying to get one for a couple years. But it was the time, I think, for nurses to step forward and to get funded. And I had a sample size of like 726 patients. I did it in small town, a larger town, and a mid-sized town to see what the differences might be in self-care. We gave them a list of 38 symptoms. They wrote a diary for 4 months, and it was a fascinating study. And I still have data from the diary on home remedies, because they talked about what they did for all these different symptoms. And there was a difference between those older adults living in the rural areas and those living in the urban areas and so on. So it was a really fascinating study. And I used that study then to go to the next study to talk about, what did I do next? I had a Robert Wood Johnson teaching nursing home. And that was, there were 11 in the country. Some of you in the room here were involved in those teaching nursing homes. And that was a great experience, although it was hard. If you have a grant from Robert Wood Johnson, you're going to work hard, let me tell you. I used to say they wanted to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And but it was really tough. And it was the first time, and Maddie Mezzi was the project director for all the 11 teaching nursing homes. And she said to me, now we're not doing mental health. And I said, how can you not do mental health? And I said, if I'm going to be the project director, we're going to do mental health. And finally she said, okay, do it. Now she says to me, I'm so glad you did that, because suddenly we began paying attention to the mental health of older adults. And I did things like, we had master students come into the nursing home, and they did back rubs and PM care. Can you imagine that for these older people? And reduced the number of sleeping medications dramatically. It was unbelievable, the kinds of things. And I had 2 psychiatric nurses that I brought into the nursing home, and they said, well, that's not going to work, because then after they go, what's going to happen? And what we did was plan how we could teach the staff so that they could then continue after the project. But the project lasted for about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And it was a really fascinating point.
I think it was around that time, too, that you actually got involved with Dr. Harper. It was a little after the first White House conference.
And Mary Harper said to me, called me one day and said, you are going to come down to a conference I'm putting on. And she says, you're going to give this paper, and then she says, you're going to write it, and then we're going to put it in a book. And I again said, me? I don't write. And I said, I just don't, I teach. My best job is when I'm teaching. I think I'm a great teacher. I can mentor, and I can do some research, but I said, I don't know about that. So Mary said, oh, of course. And so, of course, you didn't say no to Mary Harper. So I went down, and what my research, the paper, focused on the research that was being done in nursing homes across the country, and nursing homes who were doing research. The researcher was focusing on mental health. And at that time, there were only 9 studies in the entire country being done in nursing homes on mental health. And so Mary said, see, I told you. And she was really a really good mentor, because she said to me, you're going to write it up, and I did. And she wrote the book, and it was published in the book. And from then on, I started I had done some writing, but I started doing more publications.
And I think you were moving more into, with the grants, et cetera, moving into more the interdisciplinary and starting to step into international and global leadership. Maybe you'd like to share a couple things about that.
See, I've lived so long, 56 years I've been in nursing, so I got a lot of stories I can tell. But I like geriatrics. I like geriatric mental health. That was what I decided that I would continue my research on. And I was concerned because in the teaching nursing home, we set up one of the first units just for Alzheimer patients, where they were not integrated in with the others, but we had their own group. And that seemed to work really well. But I was concerned about the families. And another friend of mine came by my house one day and said, let's talk about doing a research project together. And she says, what about looking at minority caregivers? And that was another research project that I did on looking at Black caregivers of patients with Alzheimer's disease. And that was one of the first studies done on Black caregivers. And so that led me onto another research trajectory in terms of looking at caregiving across the lifespan, looking at children who are caregivers. And then I went on later to work with a colleague of mine and helped her with an idea of looking at grandmothers studying caregivers. And so it's just a fascinating thing for me when I think back about moving along with caregivers in the studies. I worked with Peggy over there in North Carolina, working on a caregiver study. And I just found that caregivers were so left behind, that they were left out of everything, and that we found that they were burdened and they were stressed and they did need education. Someone said to me, I want to learn about old-timers disease, and I want you to know that my husband, I don't know about this disease he's got, but he's stubborn, and he wets in the corner and he knows he doesn't have to. So you have all these kinds of thinking about what that disease is like. So I spent a lot of time doing that.
And I know you've taken that work internationally, but I wanted to make sure we touch on some of your leadership roles, like Sigma Theta Tau, some of the boards you've been on, and also leadership you've provided to internationally to developing educational programs and research.
I did.
Because your goal was not to be president of Sigma Theta Tau, was it?
Well, it wasn't not to be president of Sigma Theta Tau. I didn't think I could be president of Sigma Theta. I love Sigma Theta Tau, and I thought it was the greatest thing. And I remember becoming a charter member of Sigma Theta Tau at Case Western Reserve University, and to me that was such a thrill to be able to write my name in purple, because it's a purple society. And then I was president of our Alpha Mu later on, and so I'd done a lot of things with Sigma Theta Tau, but never the president. So they called me and they said that we think it's time that you put your name in. And they said you probably won't get it, but we need to have someone put their name in because we need to have more integration in this society. And so I think Vernice Ferguson was the first African-American president. And so I said, okay, now at that time I was a Pope Eminent Scholar down at the Rosencarter Institute. Someone once said to me, you're the Pope eminent scholar. How is it you know the Pope? I said, wrong Pope. This is a lady that had lots of money and worked with Rosalind Carter. So I had been on a sabbatical, and I left my family, and I moved down to Americus, Georgia, and started working with her with the caregivers and doing work with, I had the first all men caregivers group and those kind of things. So I was down there when I got the call from Sigma Theta Tau that says, okay, the convention is such and such a time and you're to be there. So I went to my boss and I said to him, I have to leave. I said, I have to go because I'm running for president. And so he asked the nurse in the School of Nursing at Georgia Southwestern, he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, he sent her an email, how important is Sigma Theta Tau? And she sent back an 11. And he said, okay, then I guess you have to go. So I did go, and I thought, and they had all kind of slogans that I had really nice colleagues were saying, you know, make my day with May, and we're going all the way. My name was one, it could rhyme with all kind of things, you know? All the way with May and stuff like that. And but I knew the person running was good, and I thought she's going to be elected, and so I felt good about just going there. But I won, and I was so shocked. I had not even prepared to stay for the day after when they do the orientation. And I thought, how am I going to do this? But the people were very nice, and that was a great leadership experience for me. You know, you worked your 2 years as before you're president-elect, and I learned so much about nursing, about interdisciplinary, how important that is, and about the global aspects of Sigma Theta Tau. And Sigma Theta Tau ranks very high, like #1 as an organization that is well organized, and you really learn a lot about leadership. They teach leadership. They what do you say? You talk the talk and walk the walk. And then I had lots of experiences because it was really nice to be the president, and I got to meet people like giving an award to Princess Anne over in England, which was wonderful. You know, she does a lot with, they call them carers in Britain. And she said to me, I think doctors get too much credit for what they do. Don't you think so? I think it's the nurses. And I'm not going to argue with someone I had to genuflect to. I said, absolutely, we're not going to do that. So I instead, and then I got to meet the Aga Khan, and he was instrumental in getting women and men in Pakistan to allow their daughters and wives to go into nursing. So we felt that was a good thing to do. And then, of course, we did a lot of international travel. And I liked international work because another mentor of mine was Joyce Fitzpatrick. And Joyce Fitzpatrick decided that one day that I should be, I have to tell you first, I had this dual role for a while. I was chair of psychiatric mental health nursing and director of a 56-bed psychiatric hospital. And that was the experiment where you had both, the person was in both roles. They told me it was 50-50 and it was 100 and 100. I know 50-50. But anyway, Joyce said to me, okay, I want you to come and be my associate dean for community. And she was very helpful in looking at my leadership skills. And she did things like, first of all, make me move my desk down to her where she was. She says, I want you to be there because you are the caring person. And she says, when people leave my office, they can go down to your office and you can put them back together. And don't think I didn't have to do that. But she also said to me, okay, I want you to learn more about leadership, so I'm sending you to Harvard for the summer. And you're going to sit in on their programs and you're going to learn. And I thought, again, I am not going to Harvard. I mean, that didn't make sense. Best experience I ever had because they teach by the case method, and I learned so much about management. And that was Joyce. So it was time for me to go on sabbatical, and she said, I said to her, I want to go on sabbatical. I've been here forever, and I haven't had a sabbatical. And she said, well, you can go on one. And I said, oh, great. And she said, but only if you do what I want you to do. And I said, what is that? And she says, learn development. I said, learn development. who am I going to learn development from? And she said, me. I know more about development than anybody in the country. So I spent my whole sabbatical learning development. And that was really a good thing to do. How to raise money if you're a dean is extremely important. But I have to tell you, the very first chance I had to take a prospect to lunch, and she said to me, because everybody knows why you're at lunch. You go to lunch and you chit-chat, and you know, I want your money, and she knows you want your money, but nobody says it. So I sat there, and she said to me, well, how much money do you need? And I said, $3 million. And she nearly fell off her chair. And one of the things that I learned was that you never go with an ask like that right away. You have to wait. You have to start very slow. And so I went back to Joyce and I said, guess what? And she said, that's not the way you do it. So I had another lady that said to me once she had money, and she says, excuse me, I like the things that you do. And she says, I'm giving you $1,000. And she pulled out her checkbook and started writing. I said, no, 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 you can't give me that, because we were, you know, in development, you go very slowly and people give you more money. Anyway, the lady that I asked for $3 million, when she passed away, she left the School of Nursing, $4.5 million. So that's not bad, is it?
And I'm going to pull you forward to having been, because I want people to hear these couple things, having been dean at Case Western for 10 years and leading us forward, doubling practically our endowed chairs. And you may not know that May did something everyone in development at Case Western told her she could not do. While she was a sitting dean, she, with some support of people who'd been her students, colleagues, etc., within 9 months, with a grassroots campaign, an endowed chair was raised in her name. And speaks to who she is and who she was as dean. And I wondered if there's some things about your leadership as a dean, your style. I know you like to quote Mrs. Carter's comment on leadership, and maybe a couple little lessons learned, because I want to save time for a couple other things, okay?
Well, Mrs. Carter was a good role model, and she always said that a good leader takes people where they want to go, but a great leader takes people where they never dreamed of going. And that was kind of my motto when I was dean of the School of Nursing. And my leadership style is one of servant leadership. I really do believe in that. I think that if you lead, but you lead by letting other people achieve. And one of the things that I was interested in was improving our enrollment in African American students. They told me it can't be done. They don't have enough, their IQ isn't high enough. They don't do the SATs. But we were very successful in 25% of our freshman class. When I first came, we only had 33 students. By the time I left, we had 104. I'm talking about total undergraduates. It's a pretty small school, but 25% of the class were African Americans, and they passed, and they belonged to Sigma Theta Tau. So it can be done.